Hello, good to see you back. Good to see you're still exercising, still doing taekwondo. Well done, keep it up. We're going to look at 3 more yoga poses that I've thought about how these could actually help you achieve better kicks. It's one thing I'm asked quite a bit is, could we use yoga to improve our kicks? And yes, you can. So we were looking at side kick and back kick last week. What we're focusing on more this week is the turning kicks, or any kicks that involve rotating and spinning. So as we come to look at some of the others, I'll talk a bit more about the hips and a bit more about blood flow and the way we need to move our hips. We're going to start off with one which is also balance, which I think we probably see more performed for the balance, but it is a posture which will help you get a better range of particularly turning kick and those kicks that rotate. So I think you know this one. It's called Vrksasana. It's the one where we lift one leg very badly, stretch up the arms. There we go. I'm there. Or am I? What can you see? Can you see that in order to achieve the height of my leg, the heel, this knee, I don't know if you can see, but this knee's not facing in the same direction as my hip. Here's the direction of my hip. If I do that, and my knee's not in line with that. Can you see this big bow on this leg? Can you see this huge overturn on that knee joint? When I pull this in, how can you see it's almost like the bottom of my calf around my knee area bends, a sort of banana shape. I don't know if I can do that again. Hang on. See if I can do that again for you. In pulling this leg into place, I then let that, and that's what you can't see is that all my weight is on the outer side of that foot, which is why that's happening. And there's no lift here. So we're going to break it down, which is why I've got the chair. In class, I'll often say to people, start here. Once you've got your balance, start here. And once you've got your balance, lift up. I don't think that's good, in that if Mr. Iyengar says put your foot somewhere, you put your foot there. Because his yoga poses are designed to get the organs, get the muscles to work, but get the organs to work. So if he wants you to have your heel, just as in Janu Shirshasana, when your heel is up here, isn't it? For those who do yoga in Janu Shirshasana, and this knee is back and this hip is locked back, as in Janu Shirshasana, that's because that activates the groin and brings blood flow around there. The pressing of the heel into the groin is Mr. Iyengar would say, is a massage of the groin. So if you can't get that up there, you could use your hand, like I'm doing, to hold it and keep it there. Because then, I know I do this sometimes, it's the ego, oh, I can keep my foot there. But then if the foot is there, then it's doing the job that the pose is supposed to do. Now, that bottom leg. I have a habit of turning my knee. So I'm just going to lift my heel off the floor to turn the knee back. This hip needs to push in. I think we talked about that last week, where we talked about skin into flesh, into bone, but it won't go completely straight. And then that knee I was talking about. This hip needs to lock back, but if I do that, that's going to shoot forward. So what have I got to do? I've got to, this heel is working this groin, I've got to work this one. And I've got to open out. Can you see if I really relax it? Can you see? I hope so. If I open out the groin, there's the relaxed groin. I'm focusing all my attention on the stood leg. That's the opening of that groin. It's hard to speak and do that at one go. So both groins are working really well, both sides. And the last thing to do would be to take the arms up. The second pose we're going to look at is Parivrtta Trikonasana, which is one that will work on hip and spine flexibility. And so again is good for the rotating and spinning kicks, turning kicks. It also, I feel, really brings out why we have to stretch the spine in order to be able to rotate the hips. So I'll focus on that a bit during this pose. Trikonasana. Last week, we're going to come in from it from Parsvottanasana, which we did last week, which is the one when you had to put your hands on your hips. Normally you would lift them, but in order to come round, because I wanted to really focus on that. So we're going to do that. Remember that from last week? I'm bending my knee to get the line on my knee. I'm lifting my heel to make sure that I'm stretching that leg back. Remember all that? And then we came forward towards the floor. So now we've come forward, we're going to take the arm that's behind our foot in front of our foot. And then we're going to rotate the hips and stretch the upper arm up and stretch the body out. What can you see? Can you see that my hips do not want to turn? There's not much happening. And why is that? Can you see? And I've worn this t-shirt in the hope that you can see. Can you see that curve there? We want, from the pubis to the breastbone, we want one straight stretched line. Same at the back. One strong stretched line. So I might look like I'm doing the pose, but now we come to what Mr. Yoga calls the work in the pose. If I let go of my ego and bring in a brick to raise the floor, I think you'll see a difference. Now, yes, I have got something to push down on, so I can push up more. And part of this is the more that you lift this upper shoulder, you will get round. But I want to focus on the hips, remember. So now I can do that. Can you see? I'm going to come off camera. Can you see the stretch here? There's no curve. There's no banana. It's a stretch. And what goes with that stretch is this, look. The ability, can you see that, to rotate that hip. So actually I feel like I could come lower now and keep rotating. Once my body seems to have got the message. So play around with your props. It's about the work in the pose, not just achieving the pose. So now with that stretch, lift that one up as well. Can you see the hip rotation? Bend the knee to come out the pose. When I watch people doing turning kicks, doing a lot of the kicks, as we lift up, I think there's a lot of counterbalance in the lean backwards. There's a lot of sinking of the hips in order to get the leg higher. That's probably a counter move, isn't it? But there's always also that banana. How many times did you see that curve there? The banana that I was talking about, the banana shape, when people are doing a turning kick. I see it a lot. And so what we've learned is if we want to get this hip round and even open the hips, wow, I should have kept my shirt. We need to stretch from the pubic bone to the breastbone. Now I do feel if I stretch, I've got somewhere to go. If I banana, my hips will lock. They're not going to get around. This is locking. There's no space here to move, so that's stuck. I can't. It's very hard to straighten. So the message I want you to take away, what this pose teaches is this stretch from here to here. That stretch from here to here. Same in the back. And how that then gives you so much more hip rotation. For anybody that wants to look it up, that's Parsvottanasana Trikonasana, the revolving triangle. Thank you. Our third pose is Upavistha Konasana. We're going to start in Dandasana, which we worked on last week. From Dandasana, we're simply going to lift the legs. We're going to widen the lift and then widen the legs. And it's important to do this one at a time. So as wide as you can without losing what Mr. Iyengar would call Tadasana legs. What does that mean? If I go wider, what can you see? So maybe you can see a rotation here. You can see the knees aren't working properly and pulled up. My ankles aren't too bad, but basically it's here I feel it, in this area. So if I come in a little bit, can you see everything goes back down and touches the floor? So everything needs to touch the floor. And after a while, that's why we keep saying work in the pose, I feel like I could go a bit further. So as you sit there, you can go a little bit further. So from here, again, we're working on the positioning of the hips. We're working on the blood flow very much in this posture, Master Angus says. So it's particularly helpful for women. So we're looking, and people have some difficulty and stiffness in the hips. We're improving with this pose the blood flow, particularly in the hip area as well. We're going to then reach forward to reach the toes. If you can't reach the toes, remember it's the work in the pose that's important. It's not about reaching your toes. And then use your belt around the balls of your feet. You can now use your arm strength, particularly if you can wind like I've just done down. You can use your arm strength. Remember that the belt needs to go around the balls of the feet. I think that was slipping, and not the instep, because you can damage yourself that way. And down under the toes on the ball of the foot and not be pulling back on your toes. So from here we're going to lift up. See how this relates to the last pose you did. You're lifting up all here from the pubis right up to the breastbone. You're lifting up. And that's the stretch. So you could stay here. And in Euro Yoga, there was 2,000 people in the hall. Mr. Iyengar did not let many people leave here and go forwards. So he put the majority of those 2,000 people, he made us stay here. So what have I picked up from that? That this really is about the back stretch and not about reaching the floor. Legs are behaving just as they did in Dandasana, just with this width. We're working on the hips and the groin. Pulling against the belt, lifting from the pubis right through, right up into the breastbone. Now you can pull down the belt a little and see, can you keep that? Wind your hands down the belt till you reach to your feet. See, can you keep this stretch? This is the stretch to keep. For those of you who want to come forwards and be able to train your body to come forwards, I thought I'd add that on as well. If you can't, I'm sorry, put that back in a minute. Remember, get a little bit of height, if that helps. If you know that the problem is in your lower back, like I do, get a little bit of height. That helps in coming forward. So I've put a brick in under there to lift up on the tailbone. The aim would then be to come forward and have the body flat on the floor. To get yourself there, I suggest you start off building up the height of that target. Because if you don't, I'm going to turn sideways to show you. If you don't, what will happen is, do you remember the banana? As you've got to stretch, as you're coming forward, you'll go around that way. In order to try and get your chest down and your head down, can you see the banana come back? Instead of what you're looking for, which is this being straight and coming forward. Build up the level of the floor. Use, I can't reach my feet now. To come forward as we come forward and down, we want to keep the chin lift, keep the breastbone lift, and aim for, although we're aiming that our chest reaches the floor, we'd aim that our stomach reached before our chest. So as we come down, I don't want to lose that. It's quite hard to see with the clothes I'm wearing, but what I want to do is bring my chin to touch the bolster. It really is. And you can see the difference when you've got the back stretch. When you get that back stretch, that's why people want to come to the end of the pose and work backwards. That once I can get my chin down and I've got something to press on, there is no need for belts. If you can come straight down and put your stomach down and chest down, you would then move from your chin to your forehead. That's actually a little bit high now for me, if I push down a bit. For anybody that wants to look that up, that's Upavistha Konasana. Always bend the knees to bring a wide angled leg pose back in. And always just sit in Dandasana to relax. Don't try and relax in the middle of that pose. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope that you use these poses in your practice and get those kicks even better.